Hi, my name is Tim. Have you ever dreamed of having a twin brother or sister? It's cool when there's always someone nearby with whom you can play, have fun, or take a walk. I know this from personal experience. This is Tom, my twin brother. You can't tell us apart at first glance, can you? Tom and I have always lived amicably, surprising others by the fact that we have never quarreled or fought. My parents were so pleased with us. But recently, there was an incident because Tom and I had a serious quarrel. He does not admit his guilt, but what he did is really terrible. Do you want to find out what we fought about? Then watch this story to the end. Outwardly, Tom and I are like two drops of water, but our characters are different. Probably this very thing allowed us to live peacefully. We complemented and compensated for each other's shortcomings and advantages. Tom is a very funny guy. He's never at home. He has a million friends, constant parties, and a new girlfriend every week. He does not particularly like to study, often sleeps in the back of the classroom, and he copies all the tests from me. I am the pride of the school, number one in all ratings for academic performance, a member of the intellectual club, and the son of my mother's friend, whom everyone should look up to. I am more relaxed. I prefer to spend my free time at home, read manga, watch anime, learn languages. For example, I learned Japanese on my own. I only know about girls and relationships from manga. In my life, I never had the courage to approach a girl that I liked. Tom tried several times to arrange dates for me, but each time I refused at the last moment because I was shy and afraid. I just did not know what to talk about with girls. So that I wouldn't get bored at home at all, Tom sometimes dragged me out to school parties or hangouts with his friends. Only thanks to this, I could at least communicate a little with others. Tom and I were in the same class, but our schedules didn't often coincide. I loved the exact sciences, mathematics, physics, the basics of architecture, and Tom loved the humanities, history, literature. In addition, after school, Tom was in a hurry to practice. He was playing for the school's basketball team, and I went to a meeting of the school's scientific council. We would return home at the same time, fall down exhausted, but Tom would immediately fall asleep like a baby, and I had to get up and do my homework. Sometimes doing it for two, but I wasn't offended. Tom, for example, passed all the standards in sports classes instead of me. By the way, about this, we often used our similarity so we could switch places when it was necessary. I went to exams instead of Tom and took final tests. Tom, as I've already said, shone with physical performance for the two of us. Probably the teachers sometimes guessed that we were cunning, but they never scolded us. Often at school, I got hurt by my brother's ex-girlfriends. They confused me with Tom and said what a scoundrel I was because I didn't call, didn't write, left in the middle of a date, started dating her friend. My brother had a very busy personal life. When I once asked him why he does this to girls, because his behavior offends them, Tom replied that life is too short and there are too many beautiful girls and you need to enjoy this advantage to the fullest. I still remember with horror the blind date that Tom arranged for me. I agreed to go to it only because my brother tricked me and said that it was a family dinner. My mother, who was very worried that I did not communicate with girls, actively joined the conversation and said that I simply had to go on this date. Believe me, it is quite difficult to object to our mother. The whole date, the girl actively stuck to me. She took my hand, tried to lean closer, made eyes, flirted. I felt terrible, not knowing how to properly respond to her signs of attention. I didn't want to offend the girl, but because of her behavior, I was terribly uncomfortable. When at the end of the date she said, "Tom, why are you so strange all evening?" I realized what was wrong. My brother promised a girl in love with him that he would go on a date with her, and sent me instead of himself. That evening, Tom was running all over the house from me. I really wanted to punch him for the first time because he deceived both me and the girl who didn't guess anything. By the way, the next day I saw her crying while talking to my brother in the school corridor. After that incident, Tom realized that arranging dates for me was a lost cause. After all, until I myself want to ask a girl for a date, all his attempts are useless. And one day, I wanted to. And if I had known that everything would turn out the way it did, I would never have told Tom all the details. But let's start from the very beginning. It was the senior year of high school. A new girl, Emily, transferred to our class. She was a little different from other classmates. She did not wear short skirts, did not admire handsome actors, did not talk about cosmetics and fashionable clothes during breaks. While introducing herself, she said that she loves Japanese culture, reads manga, watches anime, and dreams of entering the College of International Relations in the direction of Asian Studies after school. I think it's clear how she won my heart. Emily was the first person I approached myself. Stuttering and worried, I told her that we have similar interests, and I'm very glad that I will finally be able to discuss my favorite anime and manga with her sometime. Emily smiled and said that after such words, I automatically became her friend. And we really quickly became friends. We talked at breaks, discussed what we read or watched. I told Emily that I had learned Japanese on my own, and she made me promise that I would teach her too, becoming a personal tutor. Emily also met Tom. She immediately noticed that despite the external similarity, my brother and I are very different. She hardly communicated with him, only occasionally crossed paths in general classes. When I realized that I liked Emily not just as a friend, I decided to ask Tom for advice. For me, these were the first feelings I had, and I had no idea how to behave and what to do, how to express my emotions for Emily. Tom said that he realized at the very beginning that everything was coming to this. I talked about Emily too often, allowed her to touch my sacred manga collection, and even left her alive after she dropped and broke my favorite collectible anime figure with an awkward movement of her hand. Tom suggested confessing to Emily at the next school party. At such parties, there's usually a suitable atmosphere. Everyone is relaxed, having fun, so it will be easier for me to tell her about everything. I decided that I would do this. I would tell Emily that I was in love with her, and I wanted to become more than a friend to her. It was the first party I went to voluntarily. Tom helped me get ready and get dressed. That evening, we looked especially identical. Even my mother, meeting us in the hallway, looked surprised and noted that both of her sons were incredibly handsome. My plan was to invite Emily for a walk to the pool in the middle of the party, where I would confess my love to her and offer to date. And at first, everything went perfectly. We met Emily at the party and joined some stupid game that she was excited about. After a couple of hours, I realized the big moment had come. I told Emily that I wanted to talk to her, and she agreed. Fortunately, there was no one at the pool. Gathering my thoughts, I took Emily's hands and confessed that I was in love with her and would like her to become my girlfriend. Emily was very surprised. She looked at me in shock, not knowing what to say. I felt embarrassed because I hadn't thought through my further actions, and I hadn't thought to ask Tom for advice. In a matter of seconds, the thought occurred to me that I should kiss her. I leaned over to Emily, but she recoiled from me. She pulled her hands out of mine and admitted that she had always considered me only a good friend because, in fact, she likes my brother, and I was a great way to get closer to him. Now it was my turn to be silent. Emily did not explain anything more, turned around and went into the house, from where the loud music was still playing. I felt terrible. For the first time, I really liked someone, so much that I even decided to admit it, but my brother was preferred to me. Who, by the way, 5 minutes later, came up to the pool and asked what was going on, because he was sure that Emily and I would return to the party together, announcing to everyone that we were dating. I told Tom everything as it is, and it seems that Emily's behavior made him angry. Saying that he would not leave everything as it is, he abruptly broke down and went into the house. Afraid that my brother would do something stupid, I went after Tom, but he flirted with Emily for the rest of the evening. Seriously, I couldn't believe it, but Tom acted like he was really interested in her, and she, of course, reciprocated him. The party was coming to an end. I was drinking my cocktail silently, sitting on the sofa. Tom and Emily weren't around, and I didn't even want to think about what they were doing together. Suddenly, I heard laughter from the second floor, and then someone exclaimed, "What a shame!" Of course, everyone immediately rushed upstairs, and there, Emily was standing on the second floor in her underwear and blindfolded. It seems that she was trying to find the entrance to one of the rooms, but the bandage prevented her. When she realized that she was not alone, she immediately took off the bandage, screamed, and began to knock on the door even harder, which was opened a little later by my own brother. He laughed in her face in front of everyone and said that he was not interested in her and he would never date her. From the look he gave to me, I realized that Tom had deliberately staged this performance to avenge me and disgrace this girl. The next day, the whole school was discussing this case. Emily did not come to class, and 3 days later, we heard that her parents had taken her documents and transferred her to another school. I was so angry with Tom. Even after Emily's rejection, I was going to stay friends with her. What if she would change her mind over time? But my brother got into the situation and ruined everything. I still don't talk to Tom. He does not admit his guilt and said that he only did it to avenge me, but did I ask for this? I want to make peace with my brother, but every time I think of the confused Emily in the hallway, I feel uneasy. I really regret that night. Would you forgive Tom if you were me? Write your answers in the comments to this video. If you liked my story, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel so as not to miss any news stories. By the way, to find out about them first, click on the bell. Bye, everyone!